Now, the last time that court adjourned, mycologist Thomas May was undergoing the cross-examination. Now, there was an interesting turn of events. We talked about this on the podcast channel. The defense would ultimately gain the upper hand, and they would deliver blow by blow or shroom by shroom levels of reasonable doubt. And as the 10th day of testimony began in the fatal fungi murder trial, the defense counsel, Sophie Stafford, continued her assault on Dr. May's credibility. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and see how it's been shrooming over there for Miss Patterson.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup at hey, hey.
Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. Somewhere back there's a sofa, because it's a green screen. But there's definitely a Paul right here. My name's Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, well, guess what? My name is still Paul. Okay. Now, we're going to continue on going over some of the highlights of the trial, of the questioning of all the things with the murderous mushroom luncheon case. This is out of Australia. I have a playlist on it, so we're just going to go ahead and just dive right into some of this testimony. So like I said, Dr. May was continued to be up on the stand, and he did recognize in the testimony that it was like, you know what? Yeah, prior research project that he did led him to conclude that, and I'll quote, the general public has a poor ability to identify mushrooms, and he even acknowledged that there have been several incidents of misidentification of mushrooms. Obviously, this is huge for Erin if that's like the way she's trying to go. Now, the defense would bring back up the whole iNaturalist app situation. This is where, you know, people can go and post things in the app and whatnot, and it's alleged that this is where Erin found where these mushrooms were. However, the defense would bring up something, and they would say, accordingly, you, Dr. May, I'm quoting them, encourage something you've likened to an apprenticeship, which takes a long time to accurately identify mushrooms in the wild. Dr. May would say, yeah, you know what, that is correct. So the defense would circle back around and they would show Dr. May some pictures of mushrooms and whatnot. Now, remember previously he testified that the quality of the images made it difficult to definitely identify it as death cap. Well, for round 2 of, is this a deadly mushroom game or something? I don't know, I don't want to play. She would use these screenshots from iNaturalist. Again, remember this is a citizen website. You can go in there, post things, you find whatever, right? So this like would make it fair to go ahead and assume that the images were taken largely by fungi and maybe other fun girls who fancy themselves like shroom enthusiasts, okay? Rather than like a professional photographer or something like that, okay? Or like a mushroom expert or whatever. So it would just be like me going out and taking these photos, okay? The defense would show him a couple of pictures. One was called the stubble Rosco, and the other one, we're just gonna call it like the OG shroom because I cannot even begin to pronounce that, okay? But we're gonna put some photos up here. And now keep in mind, these are not necessarily the photos that they showed in court, but these are just some examples here, okay? So Dr. May would tell the jury that he couldn't confirm if those first photos were of the stubble Rosco. And he even would reiterate that it, and I'm going to quote him here, is not on any list of toxic mushrooms that I'm aware of. I expect this species to be quite widespread in Victoria. Now, the next thing they would show is a photo. It was only the cap, only the stem of the OG shroom that we're calling it, right? Now, Dr. May would then offer a similar response. And again, I'll quote him. He said, I cannot identify it from the photo. Now, then he would also say, and I'm going to quote him again, I have identified over 30,000 photos from iNaturalist, but I will never identify a mushroom where the underside or gills are unable to be seen. Now, that being said, the defense would kind of like recoup from that, and they would get May to acknowledge that the non-toxic OG shroom that I'm calling it shares similar features with the death cap, including a smooth cap and white gills. Now, no matter how much the defense kept coming at him in this way, he basically would just keep coming back talking about, look, these are amateur photos, they're this, you know, basically I cannot identify these photos because of the amateur nature of it. And really, this could go either direction for defense or state or whatever you want to call it, in my opinion. Now, it could have helped the prosecution by further cementing Dr. May's role as an expert. And while the defense does stand to benefit in one of two ways, depending on how much like weight, if any, really the jurors are going to put on Erin's iNaturalist activity, they may see Erin as, dare I say, I know, brace yourselves, a victim of a flawed app, okay? So there's that, who knows? Because again, if she's trying to play this whole thing off as like it was a mistake or whatever, I mean, there you go. But again, she's also saying she got them from the store. I don't know, right? Anyways, secondly, the defense could have confused the jury 6 ways to Sundays with this and leaving them unsure of who to blame for the tragedy, right? Like technology or a less than vigilant chef who really loves mushrooms. Now, one thing I want to hear from y'all in the comment section is what you make of this exchange. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. We're going to read through it. This is between Dr. May and Sophie Stafford, and you can either read along with me or just listen to me read it out. He told the court that he does not apply the same precision when identifying posts on iNaturalist than he does in other contexts. Stafford continued to show him photos from the website. One is labeled the shaggy parasol mushroom. He confirms it is toxic. Next, she asked him about the BC buttery colobia, to which he replied, despite claims made on iNaturalist, those don't grow in Victoria. Dr. May confirmed the honey mushroom grows in Gippsland, a rural region in southeastern Victoria, and he adds the Victorian variant of these mushrooms is bitter and is not likely to be eaten. Now, Stafford would end the cross-examination with a tiny little bit of, a mic drop, okay? She would recount the story of a woman who used the mushrooms from her yard as part of a meal that she was cooking for herself and her son. However, okay, this is the second time that she picked and used the same mushrooms, and these would ultimately kill her. Now, they would make her son ill, so here you go. I mean, look at the context of that and apply that over to what we saw take place just on the surface level. It looks like a couple of things are going on here. First of all, the defense obviously wants to show, here's the situation. This lady, got these mushrooms from her yard. Second time, she ends up dying. Her son ends up getting sick, right? Now, also, it was the perfect way to remind the jurors that this was a, dare I say, family tragedy, right? The mother would never deliberately or accidentally harm her child, so why in the world would Erin ever poison the children's grandparents, right? And the extended family, I mean, come on now. Now, let's go on to the next witness, and this is Dr. Camille Truong. Now, like Dr. May, they're also a research scientist at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Victoria, and they specialize in fungi. Now, Dr. Muldoon, who we heard from earlier in the week, if you remember, contacted Dr. Truong and asked for help in identifying the fungus because the hospital is treating these 4 patients, the whole thing that was going on or whatever. Now, her testimony, kind of like Dr. May's, ended up kind of being a little bit more advantageous towards the defense than the prosecution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up the screenshot here of the dialogue and we're going to read through it, and then just let me know what you think in the comment section. On July 31st, 2023, Truong received a call from Dr. Laura Muldoon, a toxicology registrar at Monash Health, asking for help to identify the fungi. The court hears. Muldoon said the hospital had 4 patients with suspected mushroom poisoning. The jury is shown an email Muldoon sent to Truong at 12:03 p.m. on the day. The email includes a photo which was previously shown to the jury, showing a brown paste encased in pastry. Truong says she asked Muldoon if she knew where the mushrooms were sourced from. Quote, I told her that based on this particular photograph, I would not be able to give her identification. Truong says Muldoon told her she understood the mushrooms were bought from a supermarket and a Chinese shop. Truong says that she told Muldoon it was probably impossible to be death cap mushrooms due to them only growing in the wild and being unable to be cultivated. I also told her there were absolutely no sightings of death cap mushrooms during the last months. Based on the information I received, it was highly unlikely to be a case of death cap mushroom poisoning. Dr. Camille Truong was sent a package containing leftovers of the beef Wellington on August 1st, 3 days after the lethal lunch at Erin Patterson's home. Quote, it was a large Ziploc bag containing the food item. You could see the item inside. She put on gloves and used sterilized tweezers and a microscope, the court hears. Quote, I saw it was a food item that contained mushrooms inside. I picked out the pieces of mushrooms. She said she did not find any death cap mushroom pieces. She then returned the remnants to the bag and placed it in her fridge. The next day, she took the leftovers to the lab at the Royal Botanic Gardens. I pulled out all the little pieces of mushrooms on a tray. I also took photographs of the spores I was observing. Asked by the prosecutor, Nanette Rogers, SC, if she found any death cap mushrooms in the item, she says, no, I didn't. Truong says only the mushrooms she found were field mushrooms, which can be found in supermarkets. Now, Colin Mandy would conduct the cross-examination of Dr. Truong, and based on the way that Sophie Stafford essentially beat up the prosecution's mushroom expert, Dr. May, I was basically anticipating something very similar, a nature to go down, if not worse, by Mandy. But he stayed on brand by making up facts, for example. Now, one of these he would remind her of the call with doctors to discuss the contents of the leftovers. And then he tried to put words in her mouth, in my opinion, suggesting that she discussed, and I'll quote here, discussed that the leftovers could have contained ghost or oyster mushrooms. And she replied that no, I didn't tell the doctors the samples definitely contain ghost or oyster mushrooms. mushrooms. Now, and that was just, a little example of what was going on. Now, the next witness called was Darren Canty. This is the operations manager for the transfer station and landfill, which is where the dehydrator, I know, the dehydrator, it won't go away. This is where it was thrown away. Okay, now he found CCTV footage that showed a red four-wheel driver car entering the car park at the tip. Then the woman exits the vehicle and opens the boot. Using a still image, the jury can see her carrying an item to one of the sheds. Now, Canty asked an employee to inspect the tip shed. Canty said he clearly remembers the employee saying it kind of looked like a microwave dehydrator. Okay, there's that. Now, on our live chat channel, we went over this in depth. It's fun reading this stuff over in that channel because a lot of people from Australia are there, and they're helping decipher okay, this is how recycling or the garbage system works over here versus, over here in the States. And, obviously in various different places, it works different ways, even here in the States and even over there. But so it's interesting to do that. You learn these interesting things. So next, let's keep going. The court would then hear a written statement from Constable Paul Burns. Now, in this, he's going to recount photographing and collecting the dehydrator. Now, Professor Andrew Burston, who is an intensive care specialist, would be the last to take the stand on day 10. Now, his testimony mostly kind of reaffirmed a lot of what we already know, so we're just going to kind of sofa squash it down and condense it. Okay, so he couldn't find evidence to affirm Erin had cancer, right? Remember the whole elbow and all this type of stuff? He said a cervical cancer test was done in May 2023, but it showed normal results. He also walked the prosecution through exactly what he knew about her purported illness from the beef Wellington. And I'm going to quote, "I thought there was evidence she had a diarrheal illness. Her labs were consistent with a mid-level of dehydration." Burston also says that there was no biochemical evidence of a liver injury. Now, that right there tells you, come on. So that's going to be all that. So I'm just going to add some of my little, thoughts and processes here. While this goes back and forth, this is what I think took place. In my mind, and all of this interesting information that we're learning about mushrooms and how to poison somebody with them, I guess, which do we really need to know this? It sounds to me like this is what took place. And again, we're going to go down the rabbit hole of this was intentional. We don't know what level of intention, meaning we don't know if she wanted to actually kill them, if she wanted to make them sick or whatever, but intentional of she knows she's going to poison them. So it sounds like the whole 3 tablespoon situation is there. My guess is this. I'm guessing there was 2 batches made. One batch was let's call it the control, the non-poison. It was for her and the kids. We know there's no poison in that one, right? Over here, it's the controlled. I think she took regular mushrooms and put the poison ones in there and mixed them up and put it in. So it was almost like you didn't really know who was going to get what, as opposed to I'm going to put this measured amount of death cap mushroom in each of their servings. So that's why it's some could have gotten more than the other. Now, the victims who didn't show any signs of that, I don't know what to say about that, right? I have no idea. Now, on to the whole aspect of the iNaturalist website. This is going to be the part, and I've said this, I've screamed it out loud in every single thing I do about this. If I was Erin, I would have said that I was foraging and it was an accident, just like that evidence that the defense brought up of the mother and the son. Now, again, you can get into a whole conversation about would we be willing to go out and pick out a mushroom out of our yard? If you're of that world and doing that, then sure, you're a gardener, a farmer, whatever, you know about it. I think that the context of me, who doesn't know anything about that, going out and seeing a mushroom and picking it and cooking it, of course, I would never do that, right? I would hope nobody would, because obviously we see what can happen. So I do think that the defense got some wins with this. Now, when you get into the whole thing of trying to say, oh, I got them, the mushrooms from here, and the evidence of anytime somebody asks her where she got the mushrooms, she gets shady and quiet. So I think if somebody was not being nefarious on some level, they would just be like, I forged them. Oh my God, what a horrible accident. You see what I'm saying? Now, again, then you get into the whole dynamic of, do we think she wanted to kill everybody or not? I'm going to read, and at some point, I don't know where I'll do it, but maybe in one of our live chats, someone sent me an email with their theory on this, on almost like it was an accident, but not an accident, I guess you could say. And it was more from I think she maybe was in this mental state type thing, and this is how we arrived here. And I was like, you know what? This makes so much sense. Where it was maybe she didn't intentionally start off as I'm taking out 5 people. She had this goal in mind over here, and it went terribly askew. But along the way, there was emotional outburst that gave it this erratic sense or whatever. So So, and I was like, huh, interesting theory there. And I think that could be it. I think that one reason why it is so confusing is because there was some form of that going on each way. It was almost like she continually changed directions with motivation and intention along the way, which is why it seems like, well, why would you do this but not this? And why did you do this but not this? It just makes it completely confusing. So anyways, that is it for today. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you're still watching, I greatly appreciate you for still watching. If you could, while you're down in the comment section, leave some little sofas for Rosco and Spirit, Bo and Lou, myself, and the rest of the sofa squad, so I'll have a place to sit, dish, talk about mushrooms, Casey Anthony, all the crazy stuff we talk about here at the sofa squad. And until we all gather down there to do all that in the comment section, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup that hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.